Welcome back to 40 TV. I'm your host, 40. Today we're doing part 3 of my mastering tutorial with iZotope Ozone 5. In part 1 we went over the interface, in part 2 we went over the equalizer and harmonic exciter modules, and threw the maximizer on at the end just to hear how it sounded with those two modules. I'm going to go ahead and preview the track real quick just to let you hear what we're working with if you haven't heard it in part 1 or part 2. Alright, so there you go. I'm going to bypass the maximizer for now. I'm going to click on the Reverb Module and unbypass it by clicking on the bypass button here. So let's talk about a couple things. Right now we're in stereo processing mode. We're going to be working in mid-side for this example. However, in stereo processing mode you'll notice there's a cross mix and a width. Basically, cross mix is going to mix your left and right channels, and it adjusts the mix between the two of the reverb, right? And basically what width is going to do is going to give a larger stereo image or perceived stereo image with your reverb, right? If I click on this button right here to go to my mid-side, this allows me to affect my mid and side portions of my mix independently. If I click on the mid button right here, we're not going to touch the mids because what's happening on the mids are your kick, your bass, your lead vocals, etc. Everything that's dead center in your mix. We want to affect the sides. We don't want to generate any reverb on our kick or our bass, right? So when I click on side, I'll make sure that this button is unchecked. If this button is checked and illuminated in color, then it's basically saying any changes you make to one are linked to the other. Unchecked, we're only processing the side signal or side portion of our mix. Next thing, let's talk about modes. There are several modes here. In the regular version of the plugin, you have room, plate, and hall. In the advanced version, it includes 3 extra modes: theater, cathedral, and arena. For our particular example, if you're using the regular version, select hall. In our example, or this example, I'm going to use arena. It gives a little bit illusion of a wider space. Next, we have pre-delay. This is the amount of time it takes before the sound is reflected, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select 10 milliseconds, or the initial sound is delayed. Next, what early reflections are, or what this setting does, is this lowers the perceived volume of the first reflections coming in. By adjusting this setting as well as playing with your pre-delay, you can give a perception of a wider depth as well. In this particular example, I'm going to use it, leave it at 0 dB, although feel free to play with this setting. Next, decay time is the amount of time it takes for the reverb to decay. So right now, set at 1 millisecond, this reverb is decaying pretty quick. We can increase this up to 2 or drop it down to 0.25. So for this example, we're going to leave it at 1. The low decay and high decay are independent settings for our low end and high end of our track. I'm not sure where the crossover is happening. However, if we want to give a darker sounding reverb, you'd adjust this low decay, or if you want something a little bit brighter in the reverb, you'd adjust this high decay up. So in our example, we're going to raise this to 1.25. I'm going to drop this to 0.6 for the low decay. Right now, nothing is going to happen because we have nothing increased in our wet mix. Obviously, we need to raise it up. Before we do so, I'm going to talk about what's happening up here in the spectrum. Up here in the spectrum, this is a cutoff filter. You can affect what's going to be cut off and not applied or not used for your mastering reverb. So let's say we don't really want our low end to be used. I can drag this left end of my slider in to maybe 250 hertz. That means anything under 250 hertz. Of course, the slope is implying that it's a gentle roll off. This is not going to be used to calculate our reverb. Same on the high end. Let's say I drop this down to 75 or 7.5 kilohertz. Anything up here is not going to be used to process that reverb. This gives the reverb happening basically the oomph of our mix. So this is a pretty good setting. Next, if we want to see the impulse response, this is what our reverb looks like. It tails off like so. This is just giving us a graphical representation of what's happening here. If we increase any of these settings, our decay time, for example, we'll notice that this is changing what this looks like, right? So just a graphical representation of what our reverb looks like. Next, we're going to see over here we have a dry and wet mix. Leave your dry at 100 and adjust the wet mix to taste. I'm going to crank it up to 100% just so this is extremely obvious. I'm going to click solo wet. What that does is it allows us to preview just our reverb signal. I'm going to go ahead and press spacebar on my track to audition. So that's the reverb at 100%. I found that 35% worked pretty good for this track. I'm going to let you hear it wet real quick just so you know that something is going down. And the reason I say just so you know something that's going down is if you saw over here, it's very, very minute. This is not a huge change. We're not trying to get crazy and make this extremely obvious. We're just trying to give our track a little bit more room to breathe, a little bit more space. And of course, depending on where this track is being played, whether it's being played in a club, large amplified system, etc., any small changes are going to be amplified, so you don't want to overdo it here. I'll uncheck solo wet. Next thing I'll point out, in your mid-side processing, you can solo just the side information as well as bypassing just the side information. Same for your mids. One thing I want to point out, when we switch over to the options menu, in the general tab, you'll see solo side channels and mono. By default this is unchecked. If it's unchecked, I'm going to go ahead and go back. I'll solo the side information. Sometimes when you solo it, it can sound like it's out of phase. I'll go ahead and press spacebar. I don't know if it does here, not so much, but in some tracks it might. I'll go ahead and check this. This is how it sounds if you're hearing it in mono over your speakers when you're soloing the side information. That's just something important to note. So I'll go ahead and bypass and unbypass this. I'm going to enable the maximizer again just so you can hear what it sounds like as everything is coming together. You may not hear a huge difference here. Over the headphones, I'll be honest, I cannot hear it at all. On my monitors, it's extremely minute. The only time you really maybe will hear it a little bit is happening with the piano or the keys, or that space effects. So let's go ahead and audition. And without. Alright guys, I hope you liked this tutorial. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And if you like my content, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm out. And by the way, don't forget to look forward to part 4 of the iZotope Ozone 5 mastering tutorial series coming from 40 at 40 TV. Alright guys, have a good day. I'm out.